Welcome everybody to our 4Flow webinar today. So the title of our webinar is Kickstart Your Sustainability Transformation, and we will speak about strategies and digital solutions to achieve a net zero supply chain. And today's speakers will be Henriette Koch, Senior Product Manager at 4Flow Software, and Jan Opperman, Principal at 4Flow Consulting. Okay, so before giving the stage to my colleague, just to give you a little bit an idea of how the webinar will work, we will have about 20 to 25 minute session. And at the end of the session, we will take some time to answer to your question. So feel free to write the question in the chat so that indeed at the end of the webinar, we can take some time to answer directly. Okay, then I think it's enough from my side, and I will give the stage to Jan.
Thank you very much, Greta. So I am welcoming you as well. Pleasure to be here and having this webinar. Transformation towards net zero strategy. Why are we talking about it? Why is it important? So sustainability becomes a focus, if not, it is already a focus for global supply chains. Why is that? Because there are several requirements and impacts raising for the supply chains. For example, more and more legislations, more demands from customer side, employees that have different ideas how purposeful the jobs should be. And on the other side, we have knowledge gaps maybe in your organization and capacities that are not enough to actually manage those tasks, and missing transparency. And overall, and that is a big question and something we want to answer here as well. The question, what does it mean for your sustainability costs in the end? Because of course it is always about costs as well. You shouldn't forget about the costs, although we are talking about sustainability. And the question really is, do costs have to increase? And that is something we want to answer here. So let's have a look on the different perspectives here. Why are we talking about basically net zero carbon footprint in global supply chains? What you can see here is that the emissions in the freight organization, or first of all, of logistics and transportation, is quite a big portion of the overall emissions for the European Union. And within this portion of emissions from logistics and freight transportation, actually road freight takes up roughly 50% of those emissions. So it is obvious that transportation is very critical if you want to achieve your sustainability goals, and if you in the end want to reach your net zero targets. So it is a topic you really have to concern and take into consideration. The question is now, how can you actually reduce this part of your footprint? And just one example here. So you could, for example, install electric trucks. Yeah. So that would save actually roughly 60% of your emissions. Just changing that. So for the lifetime emissions. Of course, it is not so easy to change the whole ecosystem. Trucks are not available, etc. And there's another important point. This is, of course, a lot of invest needed for this step. And there are other steps that actually need to be taken. And we want to discuss with you which steps and in which order, let's say, you should consider to really reach your goals here. In general, what are the methods? What are the tools you could apply to overcome any challenges in your achieving your sustainability goals. And we have here like a very generic, let's say, step-by-step plan, 6 steps that we want to show you, and we will further detailize later on. In general, you can say, first of all, you need to identify your impact levels and then define a roadmap. I mean, that is maybe obvious, but let's take the first step. You need to establish a baseline and understand your major impacts in your supply chain, because only then you can actually identify possible levers and fields of action, because you should always concentrate on the impacts that, or the areas that have the biggest impact. And then in the third step, once you have identified possible levers, you would define a roadmap and analyze the overall impact that is possible to realize with all these different measures and fields of action. And having said that, for the next steps, I would like to hand over to Henriette and the stage.
Thank you. Yeah, based on this identified baseline and roadmap, we would then calculate with different business cases to identify which opportunities you have and which actually additional costs come with that. And based on that, we would develop measures and a strategy for you to implement your sustainability goals and to achieve them. From the beginning of the implementation, we would help you to continuously report, monitor, and analyze your emissions so that you can see your overall progress in the course of the project. And to give you some idea about what this could look like in practice, I want to show you 2 examples of projects where we helped customers achieving the sustainability goals with the help of such a project and also our software tools. So in this first case, we were helping to achieve transparency and reducing transportation emissions in a transportation network in Europe. So here in the initial situation, the customer wanted to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in their transportation network, considering their transportation cost as a whole. Problem was that emissions haven't been calculated or recorded holistically before, so they didn't really have any transparency on what their baseline was, so where they were actually coming from. And their goal was then to have their emissions calculated with a standardized scientific method and also visualized to help them establish such baseline to reduce their emissions in the future and to establish the roadmap that we have mentioned before. What did we do? We helped them, first of all, to collect and validate their data so that the whole process regarding the greenhouse gas emissions could be defined and we could then calculate them. In addition to emissions, we also analyzed and calculated external cost and transportation cost for their whole network based on the freight rate and the transportation modes they are having in use. So as you can see, for example, in their case, a large portion of their emissions was due to road transportation and mainly because of the transportation to the customers directly. Based on this, we analyzed their emissions and their cost and visualized different scenarios for them. And the outcome of this project was that we were able to suggest 4 different measures for them to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and identify the savings potential for CO2 emissions of roughly 9%. So one of those measures we implemented or suggested for them was to select their optimal transportation mode, not only for cost, but also for emission reduction. So in total, here we implemented a standardized and reliable methodology to help them calculate both cost and CO2 emissions and to analyze that trade-off, and also enabled them to constantly report and monitor their CO2 emissions to further develop more measures to reduce their carbon footprint. In the second example, I want to show you how we could help significantly reduce carbon emissions by making the transportation process more efficient. So here we were coming also from a situation where the client wanted to reduce their carbon emissions to achieve their sustainability goals. And again, they had low transparency over their processes as a whole because they were working in silos. They were using different tools for different planners. For the material and the transportation planner, for example, they didn't really have an overview of the data and constraints the other was working with. Moreover, as you probably know, they often had legacy processes using Excel, which is very inefficient and also manually adjusting a plan, and that takes time and doesn't lead to good results. In general, it could be said that they had a very low truck utilization, so using more trucks than they actually needed. So this was where the savings potential for CO2 was identified, that they need a more efficient transportation planning process to improve the truck utilization. What we did was implementing a transportation load optimization software for them that helps them to automatically consolidate and optimize their demands earlier in the material planning phase. This way, the material planner has insights into all of the constraints that the transportation planner has to deal with and can consider them already in his planning process. So in this example, you can here on the right side, for example, this is the plan a material planner might normally make, and you can see that not all of the trucks are well utilized. So what this load optimization software would help them with is postponing or preponing orders so that the utilization of trucks across the planning horizon can be improved, and thus some trucks can be saved, reducing the carbon emission on the street. So in total, we were able here to achieve a yearly CO2 reduction of roughly 22,000 tons by improving their transportation utilization by roughly 20%. And in total, we saved about 25,000 shipments for this customer per year. In summary, this is done by using this transportation load optimization software, which allows the planners to not only consider transportation constraints, but also constraints that are relevant for the material planner, such as material availability or inventory constraints, and it helps them having more transparency in the overall supply chain planning process. And of course, speaking of emission reduction, it also helps them to monitor their CO2 emissions, but also to reduce it by reducing the number of trucks used.
Mm-hmm. Yes, super interesting. Thank you, Henriette. As you've seen, these were two really great examples how you can actually realize emission savings and at the same time optimize your network. So meaning that you have taken the first step in your mitigation hierarchy. And that is something we want to underline as well very much, because what is very important in general terms, I mean, you probably know the general mitigation hierarchy for greenhouse gas emission reductions. So you should start with elimination, reducing, substitution, and then eventually compensate. And here as well for road freight transportation networks, you need to tailor your strategy and take the right steps in the right order. And of course, elimination in a transport network is a little bit difficult to actually do for the logistics organization. As long as there are products sold, they need to be transported, or products produced. So that is generally not a task of logistics or of the supply chain, but we can have a look in the next measure, which is actually reducing, so you can avoid. And that is certainly a first step. So really making your network transparent, understand your network, see what you can optimize. And that is certainly a first step to avoid emissions. And that is, or that has been the first example that we have spoken about, that Henriette showed to us. So really avoiding transportations, meaning the first step in this mitigation hierarchy. The next step then, and that is how we actually divide this reduction area in the hierarchy. We say we can avoid, we can shift. So you could try to shift the transport mode from, for example, truck to rail, obviously, if it's possible. That is certainly a very good possibility to reduce emissions as well. As a next step, you can always try to improve. So meaning that you optimize your load, for example. That was the second example. So really, after having optimized your network and really try to avoid as much transports as possible, that you then improve your transports and really see for a very good utilization and other measures that are possible here. And the good thing here is that all these measures usually, maybe except for the transport mode shift, but most of the measures really here aim at two different targets. First of all, emission reduction, but usually they will bring along cost savings as well, which is really important because this may lay the foundation for further investments that are needed to achieve your sustainability targets and your net zero goals. So that's why this reduction area here in the mitigation hierarchy is very important as well. After successfully having reduced, you can still substitute, which means you could look for alternative technologies. So all the transportation that cannot be changed or shifted to rail, you could try to use, for example, electric drives. This was this first example I gave in the beginning. Of course, this is a very big lever as well, if it's done correctly. And here, certainly there's some investment needed, but it doesn't have to be more costly actually in the end. It is subject to a very profound business case, and if you do it properly, it can be actually a good case. But of course, it is a project that needs to be taken. And in the end, we all know that there will be emissions left over, and to finally neutralize your supply chain, you would then try to compensate here. And this is basically the idea behind it. And certainly the question is as well, how much do you want to invest in your sustainability? What are your possibilities? What is the strategy of your company? So in the end, it is important to really show the transparency towards all the measures that are possible and can be taken. And by that, calculating business cases and show the impacts will basically lay the foundation to really bring along all your measures that are needed. So this is basically the steps and your decarbonization strategy that comes out of these steps if you follow them accordingly. And with that, we want to just explain a little bit how FORFLOW can help you in these steps as well. So FORFLOW has 3 different business lines. We are having a consulting business line. We are having software that helps you achieving your goals, and we have a business line for managed services. And in the consulting area, we can support your transformation process, basically whichever question arise, and do this in a project manner. So we would have a look into your sustainability strategy in your maturity. We would develop a roadmap. We could have a look into supply chain ESG topics. So that's what we are doing in FORFLOW Consulting. And I would like to hand over to Henriette, who will show you what the other business lines are doing in this matter.
Thank you, Jan. Then we have FORFLOW Software. Here we have a wide portfolio of software tools that help you analyze, report, and monitor your CO2 emissions, but also to continuously reduce and optimize your network, but also your transportation plan. So we have an ITMS system available, but also tools dedicated to transportation load optimization, and also a network planning suite with different functionalities for analysis and optimization. And then FORFLOW Management is our managed service business line. They serve as a 4PL provider in a long-term relation with customers, helping to manage and plan their transportation network. And in doing so, with focus on sustainability, they will also help you to continuously report and monitor your emissions as well. They provide certified emission reports and help you on a constant basis to implement your sustainability measures into your supply chain plan. And with that, I thank you for your attention and hand back over to Grega.
Yes, thank you very much both. It was really insightful. And yeah, so before getting to the Q&A, if you want to know a little bit more about our solutions and our services to indeed make up a sustainable supply chain, please feel free to scan this QR code. Otherwise, here also the contact of our expert in case you just want to have a direct contact with them. Okay, so let's start with the Q&A. As mentioned, feel free to put your question in the chat. And in case we don't have enough time to answer these questions, we will get directly back to you after the session. Okay, so some questions are coming up. So there is a question here. I believe it was already answered during the session, but maybe just out of transparency. Do you just calculate and report, or do you reorganize the TMS and route planning?
Yeah, so our transportation load optimization solutions, they actually optimize your transportation plan, meaning they basically change the dates of your orders so that you can have your shipments as well utilized as possible. Of course, subject to any constraints you might have, like availability or demand constraints. But yeah, we try to actually optimize this, the transportation plan for you. And it can be connected to different TMS solutions.
Thank you, Jette. Okay, let's go with the next question. Are there shown GHG reduction potential with the software solution, the maximum leverage that can be reached in logistics, supply chain management, or TMS? Jan, maybe could you answer that?
Yes, I try, and thanks for the question. So certainly this is not the, let's say, the maximum level that is possible within supply chain or transportation management. It is, however, certainly a very important first step. As mentioned in one of the last slides, so this mitigation hierarchy really aims at taking these first steps, and this may not be a lot of saving potentials, but it is important because then all the other measures work with this reduction there already. So to put it in different words, if you wouldn't optimize this, you would then have a not optimal network that you would basically put other measures on, and that cannot be a good solution then, really. Yeah. But so to answer quickly, no, that's not the maximum that is possible, but it is one of the different parts, bits and pieces that needs to be put together.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, let me go with the next question. Is sustainability a challenge or even a requirement after all current political results in election, etc.?
I would take this question as well, but please feel free to answer as well. But like I think we as supply chain experts, we are not the ones to judge politics, I guess. I mean, we all have possibly our opinion about it, but we will not judge it. In general, although currently maybe political discussion is somewhat going in the other direction, maybe this is from our perspective rather, let's say, a temporary trend, and we all know that there needs to be done more. basically there will raise more challenges regarding sustainability in the supply chain, and they will become even bigger, I guess, the longer we wait. So that's the temporary discussion right now will not lead to we don't have to take care about it.
Thank you very much, Jan. So let me go with the next question. How do you measure progress towards achieving net zero emissions in supply chain?
I think that's a super important question, and it's interesting as well. Let me answer from my side. So it is, first of all, important, as we discussed earlier as well, it is really important to have this baseline. So you really know what is your starting point. Otherwise, you cannot measure it. And then the beauty, let's say, of transport management is that you really have your transport data if you do it right. Yeah, you can take your transport data, and you can not only, let's say, measure and calculate different scenarios, but you can then as well take the current as is situation and calculate it and directly compare. So you have a pretty good possibility to actually measure your progress in achieving net zero emissions in the supply chain, especially transport management. And that is due to several products out there where you can use it, and one of the products certainly is what Henriette showed in the first example as well.
Thank you again. So yes, I think we still have a little bit of time to answer some more questions. So let me go with the next one. What are the specific regulations or standards that companies need to comply with to achieve sustainability goals? How do you navigate regulatory complexity across different regions?
That's a good one. Interesting. What are the specific regulations? Maybe to start with that one. I mean, I will not count all the different regulations that are actually important or necessary to take care of. But let me just stick to maybe Europe, which is somehow where I am operating mostly. And we have this discussion right now. So there is certainly the reporting directive, the CSRD, which makes it important to every company to actually report your emissions. And so that is one point where you, in this case, you only need to report, but you need to report progress as well. So you need to somehow identify measures and advance in realizing the measures. So that is certainly one of those specific regulations. And there's a second one maybe which aims towards similar things, which is the CSDDD, so to say the Supply Chain Act for Europe, where you actually have to show that you progress on your carbon emission reduction as well. So same story in a different regulation. So I think there are some of them specific regulations that we really need to comply. Talking about different regulations across different regions, that is actually tough. That's true. One thing is certain, though, supply chains usually are globally, and if you tackle, let's say, a certain regulation in one area, you might tackle the other one in other areas as well. So somehow it's kind of you probably need those different regions, all of them, and which makes it not less complex, but even more maybe. So it is really, you have to understand, where am I operating as an organization, which are the relevant regions to actually have a look into the regulations, and then you have to compare them and understand what are the differences and what do I actually already comply with. If I comply in one region, do I comply in the other region? So that is somehow the work you need to do.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, I think time is up. So thank you both for the session, and thank you everybody for attending today. And yes, have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.